There.
Hi, yeah. My name is David, and tonight I am anonymous. Most of the time, I introduce myself with my last name, so you can find me on Facebook or in the phone book or whatever. If you leave a meeting and decide you wanted to get a hold of me, thank you, Lara, for inviting me tonight, and Austri for putting this group together. I appreciate any time I have the opportunity um, to be participate in service in Alcoholics Anonymous. Also, it's just good to see a couple old faces I've seen around this program for a lot of years. This month, my sobriety date is 5/5/15. So I got sober on Cinco de Mayo in 2015. So this year, in this month, it is 10 years for me. So I'm very, very, very grateful for the 10 years I have. It's the second time I've had 10 years. And I learned some things the first time around. Um, we have 30 minutes here, so putting together the whole story. And both times I've been here in Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm not so sure I could do it in 30 minutes, but I can touch some upon some talking points. I was born into and raised in a law enforcement family in Southern California, San Diego. From a very young age, I was wound up really, really tight. The nature and reasoning of a law enforcement family, just in that era, it just came along with things that, in this era, we've heard the media has shared, like, what really goes on behind the scenes with, our law enforcement. And I can tell you right now that not only is all of that stuff true, but there's stuff that is even far worse than that. Kids I grew up with about 15 close kids around me, other law enforcement families, because you're really kind of outcast wherever you go, because like your parents are cops. I grew up in a pretty rough, bad neighborhood, right? So the gangster kids didn't want to hang out with you, right? The good kids didn't. Nobody wanted to hang out with you. Nobody wants to hang out with the kid of the cop. Bottom line. So those of us, kind of got grouped together, and out of all of us, a couple of us are still into contact, but the most horrifying number is 5 of those 15 kids I grew up with committed suicide before they were 21 years of age. So alcohol for me saved my life. Alcohol kept me alive long enough to get to this program. Alcohol did for me miracles, absolute miracles. I could drink and immediately have relief from how I felt. I have spent most of my childhood with the sense of impending doom all of the time, because the doom was real. It was no BS. There was a pending doom. I did not know which parent, which version of my parent I was going to get when I got home. And I knew before that week was up, I was going to be in severe trouble with severe consequences every week, one way or the other. And I never knew when it was coming. So I was kind of like the poster child for PTSD before I was out of the 6th grade. So I started drinking pretty young because that was acceptable. Law enforcement people drink, and in those days they really drank. And so they would have big parties and things. We'd be able to sip off some glass and stuff. I figured out at a pretty young age that, wow, this kind of works. This makes me feel okay. This helps me escape. This most of all, it removed my anxiety. So clear up into the time in my early 20s, I could run to alcohol and within a couple of minutes of guzzling that drink down, I could just, I could breathe. I could be okay. And it worked. It worked for a long time till it didn't. And when alcohol stopped working in my life, that's when it seemed like everything, everything just came crashing in upon itself. destroyed relationships. Um, that's when like the lone wolf they talk about in the book, right? Like being that lone wolf. That's when that all really started. I was actually reading, I was looking through There's a Solution before we started this meeting. I was kind of glazing over Roland Hazard's story, and I was thinking a little bit about that of like, when he turned into a lone wolf and his family sent him away to Switzerland. And, that was our first doctor's opinion. I mean, he had this doctor trying to work him into a spiritual experience, right? And so I was thinking that a little bit before I got up here, because for me, um, I was introduced to AA by the courts. I didn't think I was an alcoholic. I caught alcoholism in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. Matter of fact, where I interviewed for my drug and alcohol assessment, I'd pissed them off enough. They sent my shit back to the court. Oopsie. They sent my paperwork back to the court as untreatable. And no, that's really serious, because that puts the courts in a really serious situation. Is what do you do with me? I'm psychotic, but I'm not. The days of locking guys like me up in psych wards for extended period of time, those psych wards died off with Ronald Reagan, right? Because we were just saying no. So that's a really serious situation. And my lawyer, who most likely is one of us, right? And it's funny because he shared an office with Al Valon. And if anybody here knows who Al Valon was, he was one of our early saints in the Seattle area. He was a DWI attorney. If you got DWI, go see Al Valon. He'll get you out of it. Well, I got you out of it is they rendered the deferral. He got you into AA. He got you into the program. And if you could survive that, you could make all this stuff go away for you. So and we didn't, so I wasn't early enough into AA to be blessed with that guy. But fortunately, I'm pretty violent when I drank. So I ended up with a different type of criminal attorney who'd actually shared an office with this guy. Even though he wasn't sober, he was up there telling the judge, I think if this guy, if we can get him into some of these programs and this thing sticks, he'll be great. And the judges look at it, judges like going, there's no way this guy's going to make there's no way this guy's going to make 6 months of probation or a year of probation without reoffending. He's like, but if I give him 30 days right now, he's done, right? I don't have to worry about him. You don't have to worry about him. He could start all over at the end of 30 days when he gets out of jail and, kind of starts the clock ticking again. And these guys, I don't know how they do it, but back in the day, the old school lawyers and the old school judges and all of that, they kind of like, my hearing was like over in this courtroom. So I was the only one on that calendar for that judge. And this lawyer and this judge are in there screaming at each other. And so anyways, they call me to the courtroom. He sends me home for the weekend. He tells me, no matter what, I am not to drink over the weekend. When him and my attorney figure out what they're going to do with me on Monday, they go ahead and sentence me at that time. Well, it's Friday, right? And I'd gone out Pioneer Square, jumped on my crotch rocket, hit a little bit of antifreeze on the asphalt somehow at low speed, and like, I don't know. What I read later was horrifying when I read what I did, because that was like my most severe, I think, eye-opening view of any of my blackouts, because, what do you do when you read it all on paper? It's undeniable. And I had to go back into court in front of this judge. And what was the last thing he told me not to do? Was drink. And I knew I was in big, big trouble. So that Monday and that morning, I'd run over to this, I'd gone over to this facility where I'd done this evaluation, and I went in and I realized for the first time that I had that moment of clarity where I realized that if I didn't do something to change this, I was not only A, in serious trouble, but B, I was going to kill either myself or somebody else because of the way I drank. And they ridiculed me when I came through that door, but somehow I convinced them to bring me into treatment. And I didn't get to do inpatient. I didn't have that kind of insurance. I had to do outpatient and Alcoholics Anonymous. And so the funny deal was here I was, the first night I go in to do this deal, and somehow I'd stayed out of jail. I had to go back and do 10 days. And somehow, some way, my first, night of treatment, did that, left, grabbed a, like 24-ounce ice beer, drank half of it, and somewhere in the middle of the halfway point of that drink, I'm like, what am I doing? And I poured it out. And that was my very first sobriety date in Alcoholics Anonymous, where I went on to, do this IOP thing, and then, end up in a place where, I was behind on my AA, had to get my slip signed, that kind of stuff. So I ended up to Fremont Hall. And it was weird because I had this strange little spiritual vision of this guy. So think about this guy in my martial arts club who I hadn't seen in quite a few years. And lo and behold, that's who'd walked into Fremont and asked me if I had a sponsor. I didn't know what a sponsor was. He's like, well, you do now. Call me tomorrow, right? And so this guy from my martial arts club, who I knew to drink like I drank, get in, do all the same stuff I did. On my very first day in AA, within my first couple hours, within my first hour of Alcoholics Anonymous, there was my sponsor sitting in front of me. Now, back in those days, we were pretty cool in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. I definitely was able to get through my step work, repair relationships. I hadn't, all the things in this book here hadn't yet happened to me. So I was able to repair lots of things in my life due to these steps, right? And to do just with some diligence and some willingness and some guidance for whatever that's worth. I hung out around here for almost 12 years the first time. And, and I experienced that deal like Bill talks about. Like Bill went back and says, oh, I got this offer from Towns Hospital. I could be this sponsor, counselor, and get paid, right? And he comes back to his group. And his group's like, well, that's good, but are you letting the good get in the way of what is best? And that's what happened to me in my first round with AA is the good, I married my AA sweetheart. We went on along, we had a child together, and I built this company up, and I had all these gifts and prizes of being sober for 12 years on basically a two-sided triangle, right? Like, I'd never learned through that first round of AA about we talked about the three-sided disease, but so much of what we bounced over in this book was just like stuff we read. And, we all watch like Charlie Brown's Christmas special. And it's like the right? Like that was a lot of my run through the big book, my first time. And so fast forward after 12 years of being here, by like year 10, they would call me Angry Dave, right? And I was hating on people because this program it was no longer doing for me what alcohol did when alcohol still worked for me. And, and I went to a point where I had a back injury. I ended up on some really powerful narcotics and waiting a year to get back surgery. And through that course, by the time that year's time came up, at the time, my sponsor was a medical doctor in charge of the impaired pilots program for Australia and the impaired physicians program here in Seattle. And he's like, you're just going to have to take this stuff and then deal with it later. Well, I got news for you. That my mind was gone by the time I got my surgery. So even though I was better and they were pulling me off the drug, my mind was smoked. And I went back out, and I won't lie, it was a lot of fun for about 6 months. But it resulted in kind of a horrible divorce, little bit kind of sort of, my AA sweetheart, she got better, and to this day she's still better. I mean, we're good friends, but she came into this program as somebody who used drugs and maybe never fit here. I don't know, because today um, she can drink a little bit of wine and not get into trouble, and it doesn't seem to lead her back to those drugs. And she's done okay. Um, and so but for me, I had become so complacent and just like having everything that the worst thing for the alcoholic of this variety is for life to lose its flavor, right? When that stuff, I'd done pretty well, but when you look at like everything losing its flavor, being a parent losing its flavor, have enough money to buy whatever losing its flavor, marriage losing its flavor, Alcoholics Anonymous, junior therapy meetings losing their flavor. I went to an even deeper and darker place than I'd experienced that first time coming into the program, even with all those legal troubles. And so I came back to Alcoholics Anonymous, and we talk about in this program, we don't shoot our wounded. Well, I got news for you. The meetings I went to, um, uh, you know, some of us shoot our wounded. I mean, it's okay. It's Alcoholics Anonymous, like, right? It's got everything. Um, but I reached this point where I was going to this meeting. There were a couple of people that were really kind to me and made some big differences in my life. And to this day, those people that are sober that did that for me, there's a bond there. There's something that's been there for, like 10 years. Because these weren't even people who liked me. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure that if they even still like me. You don't have to like people in this program to really love people. And so I got a little bit of help. But what had happened was I was showing up over at one of the older groups, Empire Way, right? And just trying to survive over there. It's like, and I was tore up and beat up. And you get over there and there's like 10 brand new Audis and a new Porsche and like all these new really Jaguars, all these fancy cars in the in the parking lot, right? It's a good looking meeting with a lot of really good looking people when I was getting sober again. It's not so much that way today. But is like, what a painful reminder of that was the shit that was actually killing me the first time around because I wasn't doing what I learned. So the Empire Way was wonderful for one thing. I met Vince B. A lot of people know my sponsor, Vince B. Vince B. has since passed. And Vince walked shoulder to shoulder with me. He shared with me at every turn his experience with exactly what I was going through, right? There's lots of pieces to my story. Like if I have an hour to talk, I can get into finding out about my DNA. My DNA didn't match my dad's DNA. And it's like this is a layered story, but just in the staying on track and in time. So here's Vince. And Vince has got me just kind of hanging out, checking in with him in a couple of meetings. He's got me going to some men's meetings and showing up a few little places and getting in the car. And here's the deal with Vince. So the one thing about Vince is he's blind. He'd gone in for some surgery because of his eye condition due to his diabetes. And he had the recovery went really bad and he could only see like these gray shadows. So when you got in the car with Vince, you were driving. But he was navigating. And I've been all over Los Angeles with him going, is this on this corner and this? Yeah, turn right. Like, oh, yeah. He's like, oh, is there some shady shit going on over there? I'm like, how do you know that? Like, I knew he only saw shadows. but he could feel and do and see. And so the benefit to that was when I was just totally run over by Seattle Alcoholics Anonymous and the people here that I was kind of yoked with, right? And I asked him one day, I'm like, Vince, if you were me, what would you do? He's like, I'd go to LA. And I'd be like, okay, I'll go to LA. And he's like, when? I said, just, I'm babbling. When are you going? Click. Call him back. I'm going to LA next week. What day? Blah, 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 click. Right? So call him back. Okay, I'll be there on this day. Okay. How long is it going to take you to get there? I don't know. Click. Okay, I'm leaving on this day. I'll be down there by this time, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Give me a minute. I'll call you back. Click. Fast forward, calls me back. Okay, when you arrive on this day at this time, you will be at this address at 6 o'clock. This is the man you're going to find. Here is his phone number. You have no need to call him prior to your arrival unless you're hospitalized or, matter of fact, forget about his phone number. You call me first, right? And so I did that, and I got to that deal, and it happened to be a great little kind of hippie little treatment center, and we were doing a panel. And then that guy gave me the phone number. Hey, you're going to go find this gal tomorrow night at this phone number, at this address, at this time. And I did that. And the next night, again and again. And so spending time in Los Angeles meant that I was going to be spending time at my sponsor's home group, which happened to be the Pacific Group, which meant I was going to be spending some time with his sponsor, which is another guy that is well known in AA. He ran a mission program till he was 94 years old. And so that meant that I was going to spend time down at that damn mission. What did that mean? Man, I was going to spend time on Skid Row talking to people. And one of the things that was very first pointed out to me about Skid Row, and this is something that really got me thinking, because this was profound. Like this hit me like a ton of bricks. Out on Skid Row, you're going to see overdoses, right? You're going to see people die from overdoses. You're going to see people wander into the street drunk and hit by cars and killed. You're going to see people shot or stabbed, homicide, right? You're going to see people die slowly from this disease. But there's one kind of death you're never going to see on Skid Row, and that's suicide. And I was taken back and I asked, I was just profound. I said, why? Because when you've absolutely given up on everything, you have no reason to kill yourself. And so that was an observation for a man who not only started his recovery out on that Skid Row, was thrown off the steps of that very mission, right? In his first couple of days of sobriety, trying to get something to eat so he could go donate plasma, right? But he had too little iron in his blood. They want to take his blood. To a man who, for many years, ran that program and profoundly would park his car at the old location and walk down to the new location down Skid Row every day so he could take some time to talk to people along the way. And so that was my experience this time around. So with that starting as my surrender, and absolutely only follow directions. Like Gordon mentioned, if you're doing step work with all of us, it's really easy. If you just follow directions and you don't think, it's kind of easy, right? It's a simple program if you're just following directions. And the thing I liked about those first couple of years of sobriety for me, just following directions, was, I have a sponsor. I need some advice along the way. I need some experience. I need some help making decisions. You know why I call that sponsor? Because that's how I get that information. Do you know why I follow my sponsor's direction? Follow my sponsor's direction for one and only one reason, and Vince taught me this. If I follow my sponsor's direction and what he says doesn't work, it's his fault. Right? And he's got to go back and fix it. So for me, I share with these new guys, like I have opportunity to talk to this new guy coming in today for a little bit. And that's why we follow directions, right? Like everything Vince gave me or my grand sponsor gave me or any of these guys, these old timers. I mean, some of these guys in the Pacific Group had worked steps with our founding members. Guys like Johnny Harris, who he's Bellflower Group. He wasn't a PG member, but he was a guy I got to know because I was his coffee boy at one of the Southern California conventions. I was assigned to get up at like 7 in the morning so Johnny could speak at 8 and get him whatever the heck he wanted. I could tell you how he likes his coffee and what he wants. And until he died a couple of weeks ago, I kept his phone number in my phone, and I would have my new guys call him eventually. And he was in his 90s, right? Like he wasn't always, I'd call him up, I'd go, why did Vince like Norm Alpe so much? Because Vince loved Norm Alpe. And Johnny would just go off into this story of why Norm Alpe. And it was all these guys, the thing was they'd all pick up that phone. That phone rang, regardless of the time of day, that phone rang, they would pick it up. But more importantly, they taught me what the first direction was in Alcoholics Anonymous and where to find it in the book. Those are the guys that taught me the 12-step promises, right? The 12-step promises where it says, right, like, until I'm helping others to recover and they are helping others, my deep, bitter core loneliness isn't going to leave my life. So until I'm sponsoring guys that are sponsoring other guys, I'm going to still be suffering from this deep, bitter core loneliness. And these guys showed me in the book where it was and shared with me their experience of how they got out of this. But they all did service. They were all get in the car kind of guys. When my grand sponsor, started his AA career, he would be, I can't remember the name of the Alano club he started, but anyways, there was a 50s car in the back and he lived in that car. And every night at 5, he'd be out on the corner because his sponsor would pick him up and take him to a meeting. And they did AA when they did AA from when his sponsor was going to speak here or there. Because in these earlier days of Alcoholics Anonymous, we were more speaker meetings, right? The whole idea of this general discussion, that kind of came out of the grapevine in the mid 80s. There was an article about this general discussion format. Before that, we had a lot of speaker meetings. And to this day, I still absolutely recommend my guys do speaker meetings. I require them to do speaker meetings, do men's meetings, do stuff. We do a book study on Tuesday nights. Those are requirements. Whatever they want to do in between, whatever keeps them coming back. They want to go to the junior therapy meetings and chase some girls here and there. There's no harm in that. I mean, I used to get so much trouble. I got really just hammered at the podium because I was speaking. I was actually speaking in Los Angeles, and I said from the podium, I said, I go to AA to recover, and I go to NA to find a date. And gosh, I got in so much trouble. But anyways, the gift of like was all demonstrations. That's what these guys demonstrated to me. So, when Gordon started with what he's talking about, of course he can't remember the little detail. I can tell you all the little details of him getting sober. I can tell you the story, conversations with his mom. I can tell you what he said when he walked into the spot. I remember massaging his head and talking to him about recovery. He don't remember any of it, and that's okay. But all of this was demonstrated to me, So when he made that phone call, what are you doing? I'm looking for water. All right, you have location in your app, send it to me. Right, and his sponsor and I went down and got him, brought him back to the hotel. So had him unpackaging cabinets the next day. That's all he had to do. He just had to unbox cabinets and fold cardboard. Right, we give it, don't think, just do this, right? And we demonstrated to him how we got sober. Well, all of those things were demonstrated to me. And, in the efforts of not getting in, there's a whole, such a wonderful piece of my story is, these guys that worked steps with our founding members and the stories they told, summarized it this way. It's like, there's actually 3 programs of recovery in this book. There's also a chronology in this book. And especially if you go out there and you buy one of those first edition reprints, reproductions, you get into those personal stories, it's a chronicle. And what these old guys taught me is, this was, it's kind of funny because it talks more about we are in the beginning of there's a solution. We are more than 1,000. Well, when they start, we were more than 100, right? Like, and then in the beginning, they talked about being 100, right? And we were going to say this or that, but we had one woman, we want to be 100 men, all these titles. But here's what is the big book in its original form, first edition, was a chronology of what about 66 or 67 people were doing to get sober. More importantly, it's what is demonstrated and what I do. One of the things I do in my program today is I have my guys in my home. I have them around me. I have them travel with me. That wonderful seaside. The first trip the new RV with this new RV to replace the recovery bus made was Seaside. And so one of the things I really, the thing I'm most thankful for is the fact that this is a chronology. The fact that I can go back to that first edition, the fact that I can point out to you in these personal stories, because I have been told by other people who were present for the stories what was really going on when that story was written, what they were trying to communicate there. And that's how this big book really comes to life. As part of my 10 years sober, I'm getting ready to leave in into June, beginning of July. And part of the trip I'm making is I'm hitting Texas, I'm hitting Florida, I'm hitting some of these groups where some of these people I've just spoke at the different conferences I've attended have their home groups. I'm going to go out there. I'm traveling with my family, my wife, my kids, my mother-in-law will be traveling with us once again from China. And that's a big part of this trip. And, I really wish we had more time because I'd love to share with you guys my experience in Southeast Asia or doing underground Alcoholics Anonymous in China and sharing with them the difference. They have partial literature. They don't have full literature translated into Mandarin or simplified Chinese. It's right. It's simplified Chinese. So thank you, you guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man.